Hi, everybody. It's Brandon Martinez. I'm back again with another episode of Transition Points. I am here with a very good friend of mine. His name is Cam LaPorte. He is a mental health advocate. How's it going, Cam?
I'm doing great, Brandon. How are you making out tonight?
I'm thriving. It's a little bit too warm or too cool out for me, but it is what it is. I mean, just having like a solid week of just beautiful weather, and then just to have this, it's I don't know.
It really cannot make up its mind. I keep saying that winter is sticking its claws into the weather for one last day, but then that day keeps repeating.
Yes, I was in Boston last week actually on vacation.
Oh,
And it was so lovely out there, just being by the harbor and having all this beautiful sunlight there. And
there's something about a very nice day that is soul cleansing. You know what I mean? Like
soul cleansing. Yeah.
it just feels there's something about the natural warmth on your skin that is
Yes.
very redeeming, maybe.
So Cam, we met about 3 years ago. Has it been 3 or 4 years ago?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
At the graduate student mixer at Wahoo's, at a rest in peace to Wahoo's.
Yes,
By the way.
RIP. Legendary
Uh,
spot.
you were there. Our friends Val Ward were there. Shout out Val Ward, very big in the homeless advocacy and low income advocacy in Philadelphia. Jillian Warsilla was there. Gab Dondici, who's also doing great things in the mental health community, was there as well. So it's just great to see how we've all excelled in that since then.
Yeah, some of the best and the brightest that I've ever had the privilege of having classes with and meeting.
Absolutely. But Cam, so we were in the accelerated program together, so which means that we were taking 20 plus credits every term. So we were doing by day, we were undergrad students, and then by night, we were graduate students. So
Exactly.
the average Drexel student was taking roughly 15 credits a term. And the amount of like stress it puts you under, I can't believe that we ever did it and made it out, you know?
Yeah, it's remarkable to look back and see just how our nose was on the grindstone constantly, just because you don't have time to breathe quite often.
But I can't tell you how many times probably either me and you have just been like, bro, like, what are we doing? Like, is this like, I've, how many times have I just texted you like, bro, I can't do this? Or, and that one class that we had together, theories and models of persuasion. I remember we had that very first test, and none of us did really well on it. And I was sending because I was having a literal breakdown in the class, like this is going to throw off my entire GPA. And I was sending an email to our advisor saying, I don't think I can do this. I need you to pull me out of this program. And then you put your hand on my hand. And it's like, and he looked at me and he said, bro, don't worry about it.
I remember it very well.
Like just wait 24 hours and then act on it. And then I waited 24 hours and like it was fine.
Yeah, I remember it super clearly, just because we all got the tests back and we all bombed it. I think nobody got higher than a D or something like that. And I saw you over there essentially getting ready to withdraw from the graduate program.
Yeah.
And I've been in this situation before where something very jarring happens, and my first reaction is to immediately try to rectify it, immediately try to change the course of events. But it's something that I exercised then and am still trying to learn to get with, is that the brain really needs time to absorb information, and sleeping on something, even though it's a little bit of an overused term, like, oh, I'll sleep on it, it actually helps your brain coagulate the thoughts better. And so at that moment, I just remember thinking, like, I know that you're super bright, and one single exam is not going to dampen that flame.
Yeah. Mind you, I left that class with an A plus. So that
exactly.
That just shows you. But it was that day that I really solidified you as like, yeah, this kid is my friend. You know, like we were always friends before that, but like that was the day I was like, yeah, like this kid is my friend. I need a positive influence like that in my life, because at this time, it's winter term, winter term's always like gearing up. It's the hardest,
Dreadful.
dreadful. People are on transitioning to graduating and to going on to their internship cycle. So it was just it's not a good mentality for anybody during this time. And I looked over at you and like, wow, this guy has such control over how he's feeling. And you could talk to any of our friends from those classes, they would 100% validate it.
That's not something that I've considered too much, as just control over, kind of the state of things. But I suppose you're right in that most of the time it's kind of a level-headedness, just because I guess I save more of the high intensity emotions for out of public,
Yeah,
like when I'm alone and can kind of grapple with that type of thing.
I understand. But even when you came to my graduation party, which was, I still loved it 100%. It was definitely a memory, but it was, what happened was like a legitimate hurricane just came and went during my graduation party, but it was still a fun time, like.
Oh yeah.
And I just saw you in the corner standing over there with my friend Catherine, and it was like you guys were unfazed. And it's in the I can see my mom having this literal face of panic on her face, and everybody's freaking out, and there's just you guys just like chilling, and it's like, wow, you guys are you personally are a very stoic person.
Well, thank you for that. Um, with that circumstance in particular, when it went from a very nice sunny day immediately to like a torrential downpour, I, I mean, I couldn't help but laugh. Right?
Yeah,
I know obviously it was a poor situation to be in,
but we made the
but
best of it though, and it really
exactly.
did turn out to be really fun. I just want to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to have a sense of humor,
Yeah,
and be able to recognize the ridiculousness of it. It's like, oh, of course this would happen today, right now.
yeah.
And when all of the tablecloths are being blown into the field and we gotta go around after them, it's it's like a bonding kind of moment.
100%. But Cam, so me and you have had conversations about our families separately. You know stuff about my family.
Hmm.
I know stuff about your family. And you had mentioned that your family does have a history of mental health issues. And I was wondering if you would be willing to talk about that a little bit and how it formed who you are as a person.
Yeah, I certainly can. So the prime example, or I guess the main one, would be my mother. Um, she has been in and out of mental institutions and all the like for a number of years now. Everything got worse with her mental state once COVID came through, but even before that, she'd been in and out, I think, twice between 2007 and 2010, or 2020 rather. Um, but then within the past 2 years, because of just how much stress the pandemic, I believe, has exaggerated everything, she's been in and out, I think, 6 times, which is a very difficult situation to deal with. But to clarify the matter, she's a schizophrenic. And not only is she a schizophrenic, but she is a schizophrenic in denial of her schizophrenia. Um, she mentioned to me before, because once the pandemic happened, my lease ended in Philadelphia and I moved in with her right in May of 2020, and I was there until the end of October. Um, and she mentioned to me during that 6 month window, the I got a better understanding of what she conceptualized in her brain, as far as her symptoms. And it's it's difficult because not only is she in denial of there being an issue, but she also rejects modern medicine. She believes that they're poisoning us, something along those lines, and so she's resilient towards medication. Actually, luckily in the past 2, 3 months, she's successfully gotten on medication and is doing better. But as far as that period of time in 2020, it was really difficult. She conceptualizes that she's speaking to higher beings, essentially, and that she was put on this earth to do a certain purpose. And at that time in 2020, her purpose had been fulfilled. And because of that, she told me and prepared for her death, her demise. She told me completely honestly that one day I would wake up, because her and I were the only ones living in the house. One day I would wake up and she would simply be gone. She would have vanished into light and gone up to wherever they are, or dust, or however she would have disappeared. And so to prepare for this, she handed over every sensitive document with all of her passwords, all of her financial information, every single thing that I might need. I have power of attorney over her finances because I would need that in the event of her demise. And that's not easy. There was certainly not an easy thing to hear, that my mother expected to pass soon. And even harder to hear because I know that she thinks this, and I know that it's not going to happen. And for a period of time, I won't get into every single bit of detail, but for a period of time, for a good couple months, I would say between July and October, things were very difficult because she was wailing and crying because she didn't want to go, but she also knew that she had to. And there was some higher force trying to essentially take her away, and all this and that. And being in the presence of that and trying to comfort somebody who's grieving the upcoming loss of their own life, even though in the back of my head I know it's not going to happen, is a very difficult situation to be in. And so dealing with that in the midst of COVID, being locked up in the house with her essentially 24/7, and gradually having to handle more and more of the house's responsibilities, like feeding the cats, mowing the lawn, feeding the fish, watering plants, like all of these things I had to step up and take hold of, because she found herself locked in her room, doing nothing all day. And it came to a fever point in October when I noticed that she hadn't eaten anything for about 3 days.
This is October of 2020.
Yeah, October 2020.
So I'm just trying to put this in terms that, so that would be like our thesis of our graduate program, correct?
Yes.
When we're working on that, yeah.
This is in the middle of me working on the senior project.
Yeah.
Which of course I took the most difficult route and did a 35-page research paper with like 70 citations. But either way,
yeah. So you had a lot going on, and then just add that.
Yeah, precisely. Like, not only was there regular class happening in the background, but there was this overarching massive project that I'd been working on for months at that point. But it came to a fever pitch in October because I know she wasn't eating anything and very rarely coming out of her room, not doing much of anything. And I was scared. I was scared because she's withering away, and I tried to make her eat something and she just wasn't taking to it. And I later learned that it was whomever in her brain telling her that she shouldn't eat. But I was scared. And so I called my aunt, who is a psychiatrist, her sister, and we talked on the phone and essentially said that for the next week or two, I was supposed to monitor her meals and administer meals for the next couple weeks to make sure that she's eating. And so I go to sleep that night. I wake up the next day. It's about 7 in the morning. I woke up early because it's like, okay, I need to prep some type of food for her. And I walk downstairs to see that she is face down, collapsed in front of the front door. And I, of course, start freaking out because I think that she kicked it, right? And so I run downstairs and I'm pulling her up. I'm like, Mom, are you okay? What's going on? And she gets up. I mean, she's fine. She has her shoes on, and it's like a rainstorm outside. Um, and she was saying words to me, but the words did not make any sense. She was trying to say something and she was trying to look at me, but she was looking right through me at something that was in her field of vision behind me. And this resulted in an argument because she was going outside to go speak to the neighbors across the street, who I know she dislikes. And she said that Mr. Jackson was supposed to take her somewhere. I guess this is what the spirits, entities, delusions told her. And so we have like a 30-minute kind of screaming argument outside of our house early on this morning, as I'm trying to coax her not to go over there because what she's saying is insane. And I couldn't take it at that point. Eventually, she's telling me to go inside. I'm saying, no, I'm staying right here and you're not going over there. And this resulted in me calling my dad, who came over here because they've since divorced, of course, to come over and help out. And my older brother, who was aware of the situation like, going on with my mom over the past couple months, had packed a bag. He was up at Penn State, like 3 hours away. He'd packed a bag and had just had it ready in case I needed him to come down at some point to help out. And so it's like now 8 in the morning, and I'm calling my brother Sam, and I'm in tears. I'm like, Sam, I think I really need your help right now because I can't handle this. And so, yeah, what resulted from that was a number of interventions and trying to get her to eat and going to the hospital, but then backing out of going to the hospital and all this other some such until she finally ended up back in a mental institution towards the middle to end of October. And Sam, my older brother, came down and actually lived with me in that house for 2 or 3 weeks, just to get by, just so that I wasn't alone in that house. But to make the point, I guess, a little bit more clear is that dealing with all of that and dealing with my mother's own mental health, it has been a toll upon my mind for a long while. And it's difficult too, because I certainly can't be mad at her, because when you have a mental illness that is so debilitating and forces you to see these things and act this way, I can't be mad at her because it's the brain that is causing issue. But it does not make the burden of dealing with the consequences of that any easier upon myself or anybody in my family. And so that was the main tipping point for my mother's situation.
I'm thinking about it now. It's like during that October time period, I remember just emailing you about how I thought my project was so horrible and that I needed all this positive affirmation to make myself feel better about it, even though it was actually a really good project. And like I feel horrible now just thinking about like you were going through this and I was setting you this trivial stuff, you know? So I'm so sorry.
Oh,
And it's just like those things like you don't always, for me personally, like I don't always put myself in the other person's shoes. You know, it's like, oh, and we all do that. We all have the tendency to not do that. But it's the fact that you were doing that and you with your mother and having to take care of her, and you had this extra burden of the whole hardest part of our academic time at Drexel. It's just mind blowing that you were able to handle yourself so well.
I'll admit to during that time needing some help from professors. To name one, Susan McGee but I emailed her essentially saying that I wasn't able to submit some, like I think it might have been the final on time, because I simply did not have the energy, I did not have the time, did not have the ability to do it. And she essentially, I think she gave me a day extension or something, and that wasn't enough. And so I emailed her essentially a synopsis of what I just told you, and she said, I am so sorry. Take as much time as you need. Like, like do not worry about it. Um, Everything going on. I think the mentality there is everybody understands that it is a ludicrous pace, and
Yeah.
everybody is kind of together in saying we are all here for you, we will help in whatever way we can, because it's not easy for any of us.
Mhm. So to go back to your mom, uh, how has your experience with your mom shaped your mentality to mental health now, like altogether?
Oh my goodness. Well,
That was a bit of a loaded question, so my apologies.
no, I understand. It, it is that experience, aside from struggling with my own um, difficulties beforehand, has shaped the way that I view um, mental health in general, just because it's the most direct experience I have with something so impactful. I certainly could not advocate for mental health awareness enough. Um, I am so supportive of anything towards it, and medication and counseling and therapy and anything that will um, kind of keep you together. It's it's obviously a difficult thing to deal with, and myself with my mom during all of that. And I mean, residually now, I have had the thought, because schizophrenia is hereditary. You know, and she told me that the first time she ever saw any of that was in 2005, shortly after my little brother was born. And so she was in her 30s at that point. And so I've had the thought now that, if what if I'm she told me that the first time she heard from those higher beings was in the changing rooms at a Kohl's. And so now I think, what if someday, 10 years from now, I find myself in a Kohl's, and I hear some communication from some otherworldly being. Um, and it's scary, but I, given that experience, am more buckled down to keep my brain straight than ever. And if that scenario ever comes about, um, I would be acting on it immediately, because I do not want myself to fall into and cause the same negative effects that my mother has. Um, Not to the family, because her parents are still around. They're in their 80s, and they have helped so much with helping her throughout all of this. But while I appreciate that to such an enormous extent, it's also tough, because they're 86 and 84 respectively. They should be in Boca, sitting by the poolside, not having to deal with their, sick daughter constantly. Um, but to generalize my feelings in the wake of it all would be that I am now so much more hyper attuned to where my mental state is, and trying to notice any kind of signs that I'm off early on, uh, because otherwise I don't want to be led down that same path. I don't have any tattoos, but I have wanted to get one for the past 2 years. And it's the snake eating its own tail. If you're familiar with it, it's called the Ouroboros. Um, and so that depicts kind of a cyclical nature, the snake eating its own tail continually
Yeah.
forever. Uh, I want one where it's the snake going to eat its own tail, but they're not. Like the tail is cut off to some degree, and underneath it says the cycle ends here,
Wow.
because I won't let myself fall into that cycle again.
Yeah. That's amazing, bro. I love the way that you just explained that. Um, my father, before I something I didn't realize until I started suffering from the my mental health, was that my father had mental health issues early, like around the same age I am right now,
Oh,
25,
really?
26, 27. And I started to feel these feelings that I've expressed to you before and that I've mentioned on this podcast around 25, 26 as well. And so I was like, what is going on with me? Is there something wrong with me? And then I had had a discussion with my mom, and then my mom said, hey, reach out to your father. I mean, I have a great relationship with my dad. I talk to him all the time, but she was like,
Hmm.
just reach out to your father, ask him tell him about these feelings. And then I told him, and then he was like, yes, when I was your age, I had went through it really, really bad. And I'm realizing now it's because of the way I'm feeling, it's because it's hereditary, you know.
Exactly.
And I did, and I it would he didn't tell me to protect me, you know. He didn't want me to think any less of him, which I still don't think anything less of him. He's my hero. I love him, but he tried to protect me in that sense. But I feel as though if he would have told me, or if my mom would have told me that what he went through, it would have been easier for me to recognize, like, okay, this is something I can work through and come out on top, instead of thinking that there was something wrong with my head.
Exactly. Yes, it, it's mental health is still a very difficult and stigmatized topic to discuss, because you don't want to alarm somebody, or you don't want to uh, kind of make aware that there could be something wrong inside your brain. But only by discussing these things and bringing awareness to these issues can people detect and realize, and then it will stop self-hatred towards it, because
Mm-hmm.
you stop thinking there's something wrong with me and start thinking this is a diagnosable issue, there's something that I can fix.
Yes. It's a chemical imbalance, and
Exactly.
that doesn't mean it's anything that makes you any less of a person. Like your mom, I assume she's still a wonderful person.
Yeah,
You love her dearly,
still
and
still love her.
you probably have a great more good moments with her than you have bad moments with her. And you said she's getting the help she needs now, which is fantastic if you ask me. If you ask me, but uh, so if you go on the news lately, especially like pop culture news, you can see how one specific person in general's, I won't say his name, uh, but I'm wearing his shoes right now, are his is consistently made fun of because of his mental health condition. And it's very wide known. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I,
His Graduate album was amazing.
his Graduate album is one of the best albums ever produced. Yes, I am familiar.
I just don't want to say his name for copyright reason.
Yeah, good move.
But I was wondering, what is your perception of that? How do you feel about people making fun of him? Even it's I know he's said some outlandish things, but it's a mental health condition. What is your thoughts on that?
Oh man.
And I've been meaning to
He
ask you this for a long time because I love when you explain things. So
he I've said it before, I don't believe to you, but I view him akin to like a Greek tragedy figure,
yeah,
because I do think that his Graduation album is one of the best albums ever produced.
yes,
But it seems like at some point in the 2018, 2019, I forget exactly when everything started happening, things just started taking a downturn. Um, and I don't know what level of help he's sought, or I think that because he is a celebrity uh, and has this, I don't know. I think before any of the mental stuff came through, he already had kind of an inflated self-ego.
Mhm.
Because of that, he can suffer from the same kind of issue that my mom does, in that he has a unwavering sense of self-conviction. He will never assume that anything he says is wrong. And when you are in a position where you have influence over millions of people, that is a very difficult and dangerous situation to be in. That's my general take. I think that he um I think that right now, because he got divorced, right?
Yes.
He needs to take some time to himself and you seek the help that he needs.
Yeah.
Uh,
But then again, I think because it is so stigmatized, and he sneezes and it's front page news,
right.
and I just think he'd be less likely in his eyes to be seen as a capable artist because he is getting this mental health help.
That's the issue, is that people assume that seeking help makes you weak,
Yeah.
when it's not true. If you don't
Yeah.
seek help, then how can you ever get out of the situation that you're in the first place?
Yeah.
Um, and it seems to me that for him, because he has that attitude where whatever I say is correct. I mean, I know he's likened himself to Jesus more times than one. Um, it, I being in that position makes it very difficult to even want to seek help in the first place.
Yes.
And it really is not great for the mental health sphere as a whole, because he's an easy target
Mm.
when he makes these outlandish claims. And I mean, when he ran for president, when all of this is underlying delusions from whatever he's dealing with, essentially.
I just wish we could kind of all just be more accepting of it altogether.
Yeah,
Being more accepting of the help and being more accepting of the people that need the help.
yeah,
Um, because if we were, then situations like this, I like to think wouldn't happen.
I agree. It's it's something that still, even though I think over the past decade we've made some great strides in
Mhm.
awareness for mental health, I still think that it's something that a lot of people just want to sweep under the rug
Yeah.
and not discuss the skeletons in the closet.
Yeah.
Um, but it's similar to most every social issue that anyone that we've encountered, in that only by talking about it and only by making it normalized and understood can the people that need it seek the help that they so desperately need,
Yeah.
and everybody else can understand that we're all just trying to get through life, right? And the last thing that anybody needs, especially somebody who was already dealing with a pre-existing condition, needs is other people bringing them down.
Mhm.
Uh, and especially with this artist in particular, just given the fact that he's made a number of very great contributions to the world.
Yeah. But that's why conversations like this are so important, is to get that message out there, like, hey, it's okay, we got to move in the right direction, we have to be open to talk about it, like you said. So Cam, you are by far one of the smartest people and well-spoken people I know. And you had actually done the Hunter S. Thompson thing and went out into the woods and stayed there for a little bit after graduation, just to be one with yourself and really come to terms with the transitional period in your life. Whereas I just went straight to work, and
Mhm.
that's something I really respect out of you. Is there any kind of wisdom you want to drop on us in regards to mental health that you kind of figured out while you were alone?
When I spent the month in the woods, the purpose of it was very similar to Thoreau when he was talking about going into the woods to live deliberately. Um, what's the full quote? I went into the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life,
Yeah.
and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not when I came to die discover that I had not lived.
Look at that.
And I went in there with the intention of separating myself from everything else and kind of piecing together what was left, who I was, what I'd like to do, what I want, and who I am. And so I found it a very fulfilling experience. But as far as my mental health up there goes, I found a lot of comfort in going out into the world and having, while I was alone in the woods, while I was in the woods, I did not just stay in the cabin. You know, I went
Yeah.
out and about. I traveled to Montreal. I went to Boston. I did all these different things. And one of the things that I found most gratifying and most what was stuck in my head the most was going out into the world and having conversations with people just for the pure joy of having a conversation and learning life from the perspective of another. When there was a day where I went to Boston and I was there by myself and I wanted to get breakfast at this place called the Comfy Toast or the Cozy Toast. And I sat down at the bar, unlike what I would normally do sitting at a booth, but just because, you know, I'm an individual, so I sat at the bar and uh, I sit down next to this girl to the left of me. Her name is Abby. And I'm looking at the menu, but because they have the QR codes, COVID and all that, it took me a minute to pull it up. And by the time the server came back, I didn't know what I wanted. So I leaned over to her and I was like, "Hey, what should I get?" And she's like, "I have no idea. This is my first time here." And I'm like, "Oh, how funny. This is also my first time here." And we got to chatting. And we chatted for 3 hours, just
Wow.
sitting there at the bar until they closed. And things like that, the pure joy of discussing the world with somebody else just because you can, I find combats the notion that the world is a scary place.
Wow.
The world can be scary. There are people who want to do harm, that's undeniable. But I find that a lot of the times, and living in Philadelphia kind of trained me to keep my head on a swivel,
Yeah.
to fight if I need to, run when I can, and to don't look anybody in the eyes and look out for trouble, essentially. But going and talking to so many people and having these fulfilling conversations just because we could
Yeah.
really reinstilled me with a sense of I don't know, greater harmony in amongst everybody, even though our paths in life might be so different. And that has really helped me move forward with any future interactions and has lessened some of the stress that the world can put upon you. Because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, we're all just trying to get through it. And only by coming to that realization that not everybody is out to get you did the world become a much less scary and stressful place.
I couldn't have said it literally any better. Like, this is why I really enjoy having these conversations with you, and I really miss having these regular conversations with you. You know what I mean? We used to have them quite often, but because, you know, college is done, we're both doing our own thing. I still really really appreciate that we still talk as much as we do. You know, even if it's just through a Snapchat or a text message, we still actively participate and keeping in contact.
I appreciate that, and I know that you know that I'll always be there for you whenever you need it. And
Absolutely.
you're a great guy, a great friend, and I really appreciate being able to spend a couple minutes on here talking about all of this.
No worries. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for coming by and listening to us this time. Cam, where can we find you?
Oh, well, you can find me on social media is at _Laporte. That's LAPORTE. You can also go to my website, camlaporte.com, to learn a little bit more about me, or connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to chat sometime.
All right. Thank you so much, Cam. I'll see you guys all next time. All right. Have a good one. See y'all later.